Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Business and Arts Crisis Communication Seminar. We are going to walk you through a case study on how we pivoted from this year's Canadian Arts Summit to a virtual summit, and then also take questions from our Arts Fest participants.
I'm going to introduce Maggie Fairs, who's the Senior Communications Advisor at the Business and Arts team. So Maggie is the Program Director for the Canadian Arts Summit and a Senior Strategic Advisor for Business and Arts, having worked in the UK, the US, and Canada, and most recently as an SVP Client Leader with global communications firm Weber Shandwick in New York, Minneapolis, and Toronto. Maggie brings extensive global communications and project management experience. Her greatest strength is her ability to build strong relationships and to problem solve, a skill she has honed throughout her agency work, as well as in-house experience in the nonprofit sector, where being resourceful was a necessary asset. Prior to joining Weber Shandwick, Maggie worked at Kraft Foods in the US, as well as a UK government-run charity and at a national PR in Toronto. During her tenure in communications, Maggie has led award-winning campaigns for public awareness and reputation management that have been garnered awards from the industry establishments including IABC, Sabres, and the Holmes Report. A theater geek and a lifelong supporter of the arts, Maggie has volunteered on a number of arts boards, including Crow's Theatre and the Art of Time in Toronto and the Alliance of Resident Theatre Companies in New York. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Maggie and she'll present for you today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Monica. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today chatting about this. As Monica shared with you, I work at Business and Arts right now and have done so for the past year and a half in a full-time basis, but I'm a long-time volunteer with Business and Arts and in the arts sector, full stop. And for better or worse, I've spent a lot of my years doing crisis communications. So I'm very happy to have questions and conversations with everybody today. I thought the best thing to do as we talked about crisis communications was to share a recent crisis communications scenario that we ourselves at Business and Arts went through and kind of walk you through what the process was for that and then open it up to questions, as I'm sure there are many from everyone here today. So I'll start with kind of the case study here at Business and Arts. As many of you know, at Business and Arts, we run the Canadian Arts Summit each year. And that is usually held we do it in partnership with BAM Center. And every second year we go to BAM to hold the summit. This year we were meant to be in BAM from the 16th to the 18th of April. We had our program all set. We had all of our speakers confirmed. We had all of our funders in place. We had our partnerships all done. Everything was running as smooth as it could possibly run. And then, of course, this hit. And then we had to change course entirely. So we at Business and Arts run this. We run the summit, and we do so in partnership with BAM Center, but we also have a steering committee of 14 people. So obviously working in very close partnership with these guys as well. So when news of the coronavirus was coming and when the world was starting to change and arts organizations and businesses across the world were starting to rethink what they did, we obviously took note of that and gathered our steering committee together. I think our first meeting to talk about this was on the 5th of March. And then from the 5th of March till the 9th of March, the whole world seemed to have changed. So in that 4-day span, we really had to pivot quite quickly. So we moved from bringing about 200 people to BAM Center to saying to ourselves, okay, well, what are we going to do instead? If we're not able to physically bring everyone together and hold the summit in the usual way, let's move to what we call a plan B. And what will a plan B look like? Will it be hosting a virtual summit? Will it be hosting a series of summits? Or will it be postponing it indefinitely? And we really didn't know what route we were going to take. And so for us, and for me as the program lead, and also someone who has a background in crisis communications, I put together what I call a strategic narrative. And by that, I mean, it's, you kind of start with, well, what's the context? What's the situation in which we find ourselves right now? And I do this to basically have a document where everything that everybody needs is in one place. So that it's not just me as the program director, it's everybody from the steering committee, it's everyone in our organization that needs to help and touch this, has access to the information as we know it. So it's a strategic narrative that starts off with, this is the context, this is the situation as we know it. What are we going to do next? And so really it outlines what our next steps are. And then we move into looking forward. So if we move into Plan B, what does Plan B look like? And who are all the stakeholders that need to be engaged? What are the communications we need to put out? In what order does this need to happen? And so then you kind of just lay everything out. And then you put a timeline in place that says, if we move ahead with scenario B, this is what we need to do. If we move ahead with scenario C, this is what we need to do. And this is a document that gets created. It doesn't need to be any longer than a page, page and a half. Gets created and it gets shared with everyone in your organization that needs to know it. And really, it's everything put together in one page. And so we put that together. I shared it with our steering committee, and over the course of about 2 days, we had a number of calls with them. And we had started off thinking we were going to move the summit to a virtual summit. And then literally in the span of 2 days, the entire world changed and continued to change again. And we realized that bringing people together was just not a realistic possibility. And even holding it virtually wasn't going to work in this time frame because no one's head was there. People worried about their own organizations, and we just weren't going to be able to do it. So the decision we made was to postpone. But over the course of those 2 days, because I had put together the strategic narrative, we were able to outline in pretty short order all of the communications that were needed and necessary for us to move to what the next stage would be. So I'm looking up my notes here. So basically from the strategic narrative, I had put in all of the stakeholders that we needed to reach out to and all of the communications that we needed to put into place. So then I started in the course of those 2 days, kind of putting all of that together. So we put together an FAQ document, which is frequently asked questions document, which we could share widely on our website so that people knew what we were doing, and it was answers to questions, things like, if I'm a speaker and I've been registered, am I going to get my money back? What's going to happen there? If I've already registered as a delegate, what happens on that front? I'm a funder. Now you're not holding the conference. What do I need to know? And how are you moving forward? Then we put together things like emails. So the information that needed to be shared, again, with our stakeholders, so with our funders, with people who had attended, with people who were thinking of attending, with our speakers, announcements for our board so that they knew what was happening, talking points for each of the different stakeholders. So again, everyone had exactly the same messages, updates to our partners, updates to the minister's office, because we're working in partnership with the Minister of Heritage, updates that BAM Center could share with their stakeholders as well. And again, it was a list of information where the same messages and the same sets of information could be shared and accessed by all of the different people that needed to have access to it. And again, we were making sure that we were communicating with everyone in a very timely manner, but all the information that we were sharing was accurate and correct all the time. So no one was having to guess, no one was having to make up their own information, no one was having to draft their own email, everything was together. And so in pretty short order, we had met on a Monday, we met again on a Wednesday as a steering committee, and then by Friday, we had made the decision to postpone the summit indefinitely. And then because all of the information had been put together and all of the information had been agreed, after Friday's call at 3 o'clock, between 3 o'clock on Friday and the end of day on Monday, we were able to reach out to everybody that we needed to let them know what our plans were and answer all the questions people had with regards to what we were doing next, how you're getting your money back, how you're getting refunded, what our plans are moving forward in terms of really engaging that community. And everyone felt as though they had been communicated to, and everyone felt as though they understood what was happening. So, I mean, that was kind of what we did internally at Business and Arts to really pivot and move the summit from what it would have been, which is a 2.5-day conference of about 200 people in one space, to moving it indefinitely, postponing it indefinitely, but then reaching out to all of our different stakeholders, engaging them in a way that made sense. And then since then, as Candace shared at the very beginning, we have been able to pivot, and rather than hosting the summit in its original form, we've been able to work with our various stakeholders and our various partners and put together virtual gatherings where we're still able to share information from the summit, but we're doing so in a way that is very significantly different than what we would normally would have done, but we're still able to engage that community and still play a role in convening people and being kind of an information gatherer and distributor. I know I went through that really, really quickly because I really want to make time for questions from everyone, and I'm super happy to kind of talk about any of this in more detail, or take questions from people with regards to, you know, how we can help right now with the situations that you're all dealing with. Monica, what makes the most sense now?
Yeah, perfect. No worries at all. I assume that a lot of people will have questions, so I encourage you to go ahead and ask those now within the Q&A box. We only have one so far, so
Okay.
Okay, no, more of them are popping up as I mentioned it, so
Okay,
perfect.
great.
I'll kick us off with the first question from Mary Elizabeth Archer, who asks, will we be able to view a recording of the session with the Heritage Minister? I was not able to log on to the presentation as it filled up in a hurry.
Unfortunately not. We worked with Heritage Minister to put that seminar together in pretty short order. And in working with them, they didn't want us to record the session because their rationale for doing so was information is changing at such a rapid pace with regards to what government is doing. And what they didn't want was for information that was shared on a Thursday to really almost be kind of out of date or be replaced by new information shortly thereafterwards. So what we are putting together, Business and Arts is putting together, is a transcript of that session. And so that should be coming out towards the end of this week. We'll be able to make that available, and we can share that via our mailing list and also on our website.
And then we as PMs can send that out as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Our next question is from Christy Dos Santos Wing. And Christy asks, a question on updates on the FAQ pages and the level of transparency versus consistency of messaging. What if you are still in the process of decision making and in a wait and see phase? What would you advise?
A lot of people are finding themselves now in a wait and see stage. And I think what I tell everyone is at this stage, over communication is your friend. So even if you don't have all the answers, let people know that you don't have all the answers, but that you're working on it. I think in a vacuum right now, when people don't have information, they always assume the worst. And if people aren't hearing from you, they're going to assume the worst. And so what you want people to know is that you're working on something, you don't have all the answers right now, but that you are actively engaging with whomever you need to, and that you as an organization are working really hard to try and solve this. And bring people in and ask for their help. I don't think that you have to solve everything, but I would say over-communicate with everyone at this stage.
Okay, our next question is from Susan, and Susan asks, did your sponsors agree to leave their commitment in place even though you don't have a firm date for actually holding the event?
We did, thankfully, yes. I mean, I think our Director of Operations, Brittany, might be on this call as well, and if she is, perhaps she can provide a little bit of explanation as well. But yes, what we did was very, very, very early on, when we knew we were going to be pivoting, we contacted, we called and sent emails to our key stakeholders to explain the situation to them. They were very understanding, as you can imagine. And we did explain to them that we would be doing other things to really still engage with that, with our audience. So whether that was virtual gatherings, whether that was webinars, things that we're hosting as Business and Arts, or information that we would be sharing. So we would still be playing a similar role. We just wouldn't be obviously holding the summit for all those reasons that we've explained. But we did reach out to them first, explain the situation, give them the option to back out, but thankfully none of them did. But again, it was a matter of over communicating and really telling them, hey, we've had to change. Here's what we're thinking. Here's what we're doing. Are you on board?
Okay, our next question comes from Natalie, and Natalie asks, you use the term postponed indefinitely. Is that the same as canceling? How do you define postponed versus canceled? And what is the difference in our responsibilities in each?
That's a great question. For us with the summit, I mean, again, this was a decision made by the steering committee as a whole. What we didn't want to do, because we simply don't know what the news is going to be, we didn't want to say that we were postponing the summit for this year, for 2020. So by saying that we were postponing it indefinitely, it gave us the option to go back to our stakeholders, to go back to our partner Advance Center. And if we are able to do it in whatever form it is, whether it is a virtual seminar, a virtual summit now that we host later this year, or whether we try and bring everyone together, it gives us the option of doing that. As an organization, we didn't want to say wholeheartedly, definitely no, we're not doing it this year, because we simply don't know. There's just so many unanswered questions right now. So by saying indefinitely, it kind of gave us the ability to go back and revisit this if we're able to do so. And I think for anybody communicating right now, if you're not sure, and if you don't know definitely, or you don't want to commit definitely to saying, we're absolutely not going ahead with the season, we're absolutely not doing that, then I think you can 100% say we're postponing it indefinitely, and you're just going to reevaluate the situation and kind of see what happens. And nobody's blaming you for that. That's perfectly reasonable.
Okay, so our next question comes from Mary Elizabeth Archer, and Mary Elizabeth asks, how can we apply what you have covered here to our situations in the Arts Fest program? It's kind of a wide-spreading question just because of the amount of organizations we have participating within the program. So it obviously is really tailored to each individual organization, but I guess an overarching idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think every situation is different. I mean, I'll bring you back to what it is that we did here at Business and Arts. So again, I started off, and this is just my communications background. So I started off with putting together that strategic narrative, which really is not complicated. It doesn't need to be difficult to told. It really is, this is the situation we find ourselves in. This is what we think we're going to do. These are all the people we need to engage. These are all the pieces of communication we need to do to get ourselves there. And this is the timeline in which we're going to execute against all of these. It's a very simple document, but for me, it just helps ground what I'm going to do, what we as an organization are going to do. It's easily shared, which means whomever else in your organization that you need to pull in to help you, they understand what's happening as well and what their role is in all of this. So I would definitely encourage people to take the time, put something together, put that one pager together, and then from that, you're able to put together, what I call a messaging playbook. And again, that's just a document that has all the different messages. So it has, the email you need to send to your steering committee, to your board, to your funders, to your employees. Like everything is all together, and you're able to put this document together. It's able to live in one spot, and then you're able to share it with whomever you need to. So again, everybody in your organization is not having to start from scratch each and every time. They have a document that they can reference. They have messages that have been agreed by everyone who needs to read them, and they can come back to them time and time again. And it really, it eliminates, a lot of the, oh my goodness, what am I going to say to this person? What am I going to say to that person? You have messaging that you have agreed. It's in one place, and you can call on it as and when you need to. And then when your situation changes, you just get to update it. But it does live in that one space. And honestly, in the craziness that has been these past couple of weeks, when everyone is scrambling and nobody really knows, what they should be doing from one to the next, and you're worried about, you haven't engaged this person, you haven't spoken to that person, when everything exists in one place, it's just so easy to call and to pull. And then it's, you as the person in charge, or, someone else on your team needs to have access to something. It's all right there. I hope that's helpful.
Awesome, thank you. And just another question that someone asked, yes, we will be sharing Maggie's playbook after. We'll upload it to the resources page, and then as well as your PM will probably send it to you in a follow-up email with the link to the recording for this. Our next question comes from Jackie Santos, and Jackie asks, how are you planning to facilitate your online gatherings? And can you give us an idea of what they might look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think our online gatherings are going to be different depending on who we're working with. When we're working with people in the federal government, so when we're hosting one of the ministers, obviously there are, there are restrictions, and there are, there's different parties that you need to work with there. So you obviously work with them as best you can. What our goal from a business arts point of view is to host as many information gathering sessions as we possibly can. We want to record them every time we can. We want to do transcripts. We want to provide as much information to people as possible. And then we always want to have a good, healthy amount of time for Q&A, because we know right now the access to information is key. And so the larger role we can play in providing people with access to information, the better. And so that's always our goal. And right now, as we kind of put whatever roster of events together, we're really looking at it from, okay, who is it that people want to hear the most from right now? And if we can have access to those people and put them in front of a larger audience, then we're going to.
Our next question from Belen Toran kind of addresses what I said earlier. Belen asked, do you have a redacted version of your strategic narrative to share with attendees to have a visual? Yes, we will upload that after.
Yeah. And I mean, we obviously might take certain kind of core team together, have those conversations about what it is that you need to do, and just be prepared to act really, really quickly and kind of change course, and being able to really react to what you're seeing and hearing in the news, and how that's going to affect you and your organization. And then really it is a matter of, you know, agreeing as a team, as an executive leadership team, as a group, what it is that you want to do, how your organization wants to react to something, and then putting that down in writing. Again, it does not need to be super formal, it does not need to be long, but it's you as a team agreeing what you want to do, how you want to position your organization, and then who you need to tell about that, and then being able to just go.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question comes from Elena Godfrey, and Elena asks, we have actually already done this process. However, we have found that some direct contacts are not reachable. Do you have any recommendations to ensure that our message reaches all necessary parties?
Are you able to put something on your website, for example, so that when people come to you or reach out to you, you know, the information that you want to share is there? So perhaps it's something that you can put on your website. If you have a mailing list, even if people aren't engaging with you, you can send it out so that you've circulated something yourself. If you can share it via social media on any of your channels, even things like putting a message, you know, making sure that the message you have on your voicemail or your auto signature kind of shares, you know, what you as an organization are doing, if you're able to succinctly say it in a couple of lines.
Okay, so our next question comes, and I think could be addressed by Candace because it addresses our funders. So
Okay.
this one is from Emily Reed, and Emily says, "Hi there. Since you have a confirmed funder for Arts Fest matching Canadian Heritage, why can't you free up confirmed funds as soon as possible? The end of the summer may be too late for many of us trying to stay afloat."
Thanks, Emily. We do obviously understand and appreciate the urgency for those funds. And as I said at the top, we are evaluating our process right now to see how we can respond and maximize our support to organizations in a timely way. As for our funders, a number of those funds are dispersed to us on their fiscal. So we actually don't have all the money all at once. So we get dispersed funds through our fiscal year ends depending on our regional and federal funders. So for our cash flow purposes, that money comes in a trickle sort of effect. So we are evaluating our process and looking to see what we can do as far as extending the deadline or shifting the deadline or working towards getting those funds to you in a more accessible way. But at this time, we don't have any answers on that, but we will continue working towards that and let you know as soon as possible.
Thank you, Candace. Okay, our next question is from Allison Halser, and it's more of a communications one directed to Maggie. So Allison asks, what was your timeline from March 5th of your first meeting to getting FAQ document out and your emails out to all stakeholders? What date did you have those communications out?
We started our conversations with our steering committee on March the 5th or 6th. Then we had a follow-up with them on March the 9th, which was a Friday afternoon. And between our first meeting, which I think was on a Monday or a Tuesday afternoon, to the Friday when we had our regroup with our steering committee, I had used that time, because we put those scenarios in place, so I had used that time to put together the strategic narrative and then also the messaging playbook, so that come the end of our meeting on Friday, we were able to start outreach. So the first people we started with were our funders, and then our board, and then we put, that would be things like our website updates and emails that would go out to our registered speakers, our registered delegates. And so between Friday afternoon and the end of day Monday, everyone who needed to be told was told, because we had done the work beforehand. So that once the steering committee had made a decision in what direction they wanted to go, the messaging had already been put in place and we were able to go in very short order, which was helpful.
Okay, our next question is from Emily Reed again, but before I address that question, I just wanted to point out Mary Blaise, one of our mentors. She made a really helpful comment in the chat window, and she says, from experience, I can also suggest that setting up a simple Excel spreadsheet to track questions for your organization is receiving from stakeholders. This is helpful in tracking who best in your organization can respond to each question, and it's also helpful in updating your FAQ page. So thank you, Mary. And our next question.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and it's so nice to see so many of our mentors in this webinar today, and just so many people from Arts Fest. Okay,
no, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I mean, yeah, I mean, this takes a community of people to get right. So it's good to have input from everyone.
Mm-hmm. And our next question is from Emily. Read again, and she says, "Read the summit and similar events. What strategy do you suggest if a full cancellation, no adaptations is necessary? And do you have any suggestions on retaining sponsors if that happens?"
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a situation that a lot of people are going to find themselves in. Again, I would say over communication would be key on that front. So if the decision has been made to completely cancel something, then come out with that and make that your strong communications to begin with. I would start off first by engaging your existing funders and letting them know of that decision, explaining why you've chosen to do that, and then working with them to say, we'd still love to have you support us, and then maybe go to them with some solutions. We'd love to have you support us in this way. Instead of being able to do this as we had originally thought we were going to do, instead to serve the same need or to help our sector or whatever it might be, here's what we're going to do, and we'd love to have you continue on with us as a partner. But I think right now, definitely engage, have conversations with people, but also be proactive and really go with a solution for how you can still be a part of your community, supporting the groups of people that you had wanted to be in front of before, and really, and people are super generous with their time and their money, but they need to feel as though it's being put in the right direction. So I think if you go to them with that solution, it will be super helpful.
Okay, our next question comes from Crystal Cripps, and Crystal asks, when you were considering a virtual conference, what platforms were you looking at, and can you direct us to where we can find more resources and information about making a change from in-person to virtual conferences?
Yeah, I think that's something we're all looking into right now. When we had talked about moving the summit to a virtual platform, we were working with BAM Center, that's our partner for the Canadian Art Summit. And so the conversations that we had with them was around technology. And to be honest with you, it was Zoom. It was a version of Zoom that we're all using right now to host people and to be able to engage people as much as possible. And I think for us, we've never done anything close to that. I know at Arts Fest, you guys have been using Zoom for a while, but for the summit, it's always been in person. So it was very new for us, but it was a Zoom platform. Oh, we can't hear you, Jessica.
Oh, sorry.
There you go, perfect.
I'll just add briefly that a good resource is called Digital Arts Nation, and they are working with performing arts going live. So I'll send those links out to you as well.
Perfect.
Awesome, thank you, Jessica. And we can include that as PMs in our top of the month email. So we'll make sure that all of you have that sent out to you. Okay, our next question comes from Carol Kwan, and Carol asks, this one could be directed to Maggie or Brittany, whoever feels they want to answer or have any advice and inputs. So Carol asks, what benefits are you offering to your sponsors with a virtual program where brand visibility and sponsor perks won't be the same as at a live conference?
So we've had, I don't know if Brittany's on the line, she can certainly speak to this as well, but in the conversations, we are lucky to have some good longstanding relationships with a lot of our funders. And so when we were thinking of moving the summit to a virtual format, we just got on the phone and talked to them about that and said, this is what we're planning on doing, but obviously we'll still feature you as a sponsor. Your logo will still appear, a lot of the benefits that had already been agreed will still be in place. And you will be a partner in still reaching out to and still engaging the arts community. It just won't be in the same format. And for the most part, I think people are so understanding because the circumstances are just so different and nothing that anybody can control. So again, it was just all about having those honest communications and being very upfront with them, but reaching out to them before we had sent the notice out to the wider audience. So again, they feel as though they're part of the process and they're on board as you move forward.
Another question, this one's could be directed to Candace because it concerns funding. It kind of follows up what you mentioned earlier already, though. The question comes from Jackie, and it is ArtsFest still committed to providing matching funds, or are you unable to meet this for participating organizations now?
We are absolutely still committed. I think right now we're looking at finding ways that we can better adapt and respond given the current climate. But our commitment to the matching fund program and your pre-approval amounts at this time remains secure.
Thank you, Candace. Okay, our next question comes from Shirley Enns, and Shirley asks, what is the best method of communication to share information? Sending emails may be difficult. Can media and social media be acceptable?
Yes, I think social media is certainly very acceptable. I think right now people are turning to social media more than ever to have a better sense of what other people are doing and what's happening. I think that's a great question, but I think it's also kind of a bit of an individual one as well. Like, how do you as an organization normally communicate with your key audiences? Is it via email? Is it via your website? Is it via social? Is it personal contact? And I think whatever that is, carry on using that method. But the only thing I would say is that make sure the messaging is the same across all your different platforms. So you might favor one above the other, but then, so for example, if you do communicate with people via email, then make sure your website and then anything you put out via social media reflects the messages that you've shared. So really it's all about consistency of messages across these different platforms so that people, however they reach you, have the same message.
And then in terms of communication, our mentor, Mary Blaise, again, had a really excellent suggestion, said, jumping back in here again to make another suggestion, re-communications planning. Do your best to make sure your communications address the 5 W's, who, what, where, when, and why. Mm-hmm. Okay, and our next question comes from Ida Edwards, and Ida asks, how do we promote or not promote a summer festival to the stakeholders and then the public?
Sorry, how do you promote and then not promote?
Or not promote, in this case, a summer festival. I guess the question addresses when you aren't sure, how do you go about promoting that?
Well, I mean, I think this is a time just to be super honest with people and say, we have a great summer program planned. Here's what it is going to look like. Stay tuned. Because I think right now you simply don't know whether you're going to be putting it out there or not. But if you still want to build momentum for yourself, you want to show people that if things change and you're able to do this, this is what it's going to look like, and you give people something to look forward to, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And it shows that you're still engaged.
Okay, so this is our final question we have in the Q&A box. It's a bit of a long one though, so we might have another by the time I'm done asking, so we'll see. So this one's from Erin, and Erin asks, for nonprofits that can foresee a cash flow issue months out the longer that this continues, do you have any recommendations for how to craft that message to funders, service users, etc., both in a help us stay afloat way and, if needed, we're winding down the organization way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to chat specifically maybe after this call with this person. But I mean, I think what you want to do again is kind of set the context. I think funders and everyone knows right now that this is an incredibly difficult time for the not-for-profit sector. So I think if you lay out the case as to the financial implications of having to shut a season down, what that means to you and your organization, and you lay it out, and then you make an ask of your funder. I mean, I think there are lovely ways to do that really show everything that you have done as an organization to date, how you've helped your community, the role that you've played, and now you find yourself in a circumstance that is entirely one beyond your control, and you are reaching out to them now for their help and for their support. And I think there's a really nice way of crafting that really speaks to the story of who you are, what you've done, how you've been supportive in the past, and now you're reaching out to them to help you.
Sorry, I was muted. I also had a great suggestion from our creative director at Business and Arts, Karan, and he mentioned if you have follow-up questions about communication, email them to your PMs and we can forward those on to Maggie, and we can maybe do a follow-up webinar or something of the sort. We'll figure out some way to.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. We have 2 more questions now. So our next comes from Rianne, and Rianne says, our event is a summer festival. If we decide to postpone it until next June, will the Arts Fest matching funds still be available, provided our sponsors are in place by the deadline? So that one's funds directed to Candice. Let me know if you need me to repeat it.
Sure, we can absolutely take a look at that. Like I said, we are looking at seeing how we can adapt our process to suit some of these scenarios that you're all working with. There are, as you can imagine, we have, I think, 390 organizations in the program, and I think there are probably 390 scenarios. And we really do want to be able to respond in a way that will address as many of those scenarios as possible. And this is another one of canceling events or postponing events until next year. And we do plan to run year 2 of the program, and having year 1 and year 2 overlap is something that may take place. We're not sure. So, we are looking at that, and we want to see how we can manage some of those scenarios best. So we will continue. These questions are being factored into how we're looking at managing the program and adapting to suit some of these new challenges that have been proposed, whether it's canceled events, postponed events, or different sponsors as well too. So that is something that we are going to consider for sure.
Thank you. And that definitely ties in to the next question that was immediately after, kind of along the same lines, from Shirley. And Shirley said, will Arts Fest match sponsorship funds for canceled concerts? For canceled concerts, sponsor is willing to transfer their sponsorship benefits to next season. So
yeah, again, I don't see why not. That would actually fall in within our current process. If you receive your proof of deposit and proof of payment prior to the deadline, that falls within our current way of evaluating the matching funds. But again, we are looking to find ways to adapt that process to this new reality.
Okay, thank you, Candice. The next question ties more into communicating with sponsors, and it's Susan Robertson. And Susan says, we have canceled our event for this year. Is it appropriate to contact potential sponsors for next year's sponsorship, or should we wait until later?
I think it's fine to contact them right now. I mean, I think the earlier you engage people, the better. And I think if you just have open conversation with them and you explain to them, you've had to change course this year, like everyone has. These are your plans for next year. We'd love to partner with you on this and start those conversations now. I think that's absolutely fine.
So we have one final question, and it's kind of a nice uplifting one. This one's from Grady Lawler, and Grady asks, what are each of you most excited about with this new change of landscape? I guess for me personally, I'm excited about working more with Zoom and connecting with everyone like this, just because it's something we as PMs were used to doing already, and it's nice that we can help and offer our skills that way.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think the Zoom platform and being able to do things like this is incredibly, it's really incredibly helpful. And I would say for me, we spent the past, I want to say about 6 months planning the Canadian Art Summit and had it in such a good place. And it would be a 2.5-day event, which would have been absolutely wonderful. But what I have found since the world changed and we had to pivot so quickly, now what we have is the ability to host much smaller gatherings, but much more frequently. So it gives us so many more touch points with the art sector, and it gives us the ability to connect with so many more people across different sectors of the art sector that I think for me, I have found that to be really, really quite wonderful. And technology has allowed us to move a whole lot quicker than normally we would, and hopefully provide the resources that the art sector wants and that we're able to do, which I think, I speak personally here, for me has been super gratifying.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible opportunity for people's expertise to shine. And I will do a shout out here now to all of our mentors that we have with Arts Fest. who are incredible individuals, very skilled and passionate about the work that they do. And there's a real opportunity for them to share that expertise on an exponential level. They've already been so incredibly supportive throughout this program, volunteering their time. But I think even more so now, there's a real opportunity to kind of dig deep into your expertise and to really offer that support and that advice, and in a very open-ended, collaborative type way. I think it also helps to kind of diffuse that mentor-mentee relationship, and also sees us a lot more as peers, where we do have a lot as colleagues to share together. We are all in this together. There's no hierarchy in this at all. So there's a real opportunity for us to share on a much more even plane. And I do just want to give out a thanks to our mentors for all of their expertise and passion and enthusiasm and incredible work that they do during this time. And I think that you'll see more and more of that rise to the surface. And I think too that there's a real opportunity to collaborate. Some of these smaller organizations, some of which are here on this call today, you know, it was a struggle before the pandemic hit, and now it may be an opportunity for you to work together with another organization and create that stronger together and have a greater impact as two rather than as one. So I think there's also an opportunity for us to collaborate and merge our efforts and really see the strength of the sector come through in that way as well.
Absolutely. I just want to echo sentiments of my colleagues, just seeing how we've been able to come together as a team and adapt for Arts Fest, both our business and arts audience, and to just support everyone, one another, having special webinars like this. I'm seeing a lot of you meet on Mentor City, which is fantastic. You're taking this time to ask for help and advice, and great thank you to all of our mentors for doing that. And I would just say on a personal note, it's really amazing just to see that, you know, people are becoming really inventive and having kitchen dance parties and story time from teachers and, you know, concerts in their kitchen or their living room, and seeing the arts thrive during this time when it's really challenging for all of us. And so many of us are facing isolation and feeling lonely and, you know, in a totally different work environment than we're used to. So it's nice to see community come together.
I'm not sure if anyone else from the business and arts team has anything to add.
I'll jump in real quickly. I think what we're seeing now is amazing in the sense of artists becoming more democratic, as in these big institutions are now investing so much money in broadcasting their content on Zoom. And this is something the smaller institutions can use also. And you better believe, once this is all said and done, and once life goes back to normal, this will be a revenue stream, right? Yes, you won't charge $50 like you would for a normal ticket, but you might charge $10 for a digital experience. So I think we're investing a lot now in this technology, and we will see the returns for sure.
I think I'll just follow up on Karan's note and say that this crisis has put the arts as a need and not a want for people. We are all at home self-isolating, and without television, movies, books, music, we would not be able to exist right now. So I really hope that when this is over, we come away with a society that has finally realized the significance that arts plays in our culture.
Awesome, thank you all. We had a few more questions come in the meantime as well, so let me know if you have any time constraints to anyone who's answering questions.
No,
So perfect. Okay, our next comes from Brenda, and Brenda asks, what if we have a commitment from sponsors but have postponed and don't know if they'll pay before that deadline? Will there be room for an extension on that before the Arts Fest deadline? It's a funding question.
Possibly. We are looking at how we might move forward with the matching fund SCA deadline process. So whether that's extending the deadline or whether that's shifting the deadline or shifting the process altogether. So we are taking a look at what that looks like. So may very well be an opportunity for that.
Awesome, thank you. The next one comes in concerning contacting businesses, so communications standpoint. And it's from Jillian. Jillian asks, is it okay to make first contact with businesses for partnership while everyone is working from home? Or would it be better to wait until we can meet in person?
No, I don't think you need to wait until you can meet in person. I think people are at home right now. I think people are, they're busy, but they're at home. This is the new norm for a while. We don't quite know how long it's going to last. And I think if you want to reach out to someone, then please do. I think now is a great time.
Okay, this next one is a funding question again. So it's from Shirley, and it says, following up to a previous question, if we ask for sponsorships for next season, and if the sponsor agrees and we receive the funds before July 31st, will ArtsFest still match those funds? We were unable to secure sponsorships from some events due to them being canceled this season.
Yeah, again, we absolutely are going to take a look at that. So as events take place, if your event was to take place in 2020 and has been moved to 2021, if you do have those funds in place, we can absolutely take a look at matching those sponsorship funds if you have them in place prior to the deadline. Or again, we may look at extending the deadline or shifting that process altogether. So we will take a look at that. But I would think that, there are a number of arts organizations right now that have canceled or postponed their events beyond 2020 and into 2021. So we just need to take a look at what that looks like from our process as it stands right now, and evaluate that for moving forward. So we will have some adjustments in place adapting to this new situation for sure. And we're going to be working together with the rest of the Arts Best team to respond to those questions and create some new procedures and process for moving forward that you can follow those guidelines.
Thank you. That was our final question. The last one's just a comment from Margaret saying it would be helpful to know about this sooner rather than later. Thank you, hopefully.
Absolutely, we're working on it. We really do understand the urgency of it, and we are in this together, and we are doing everything we can. So we will be in touch soon.
Okay, and we had another question come in. This one concerns communications again, and it's from Sylvie. And Sylvie says, could I ask about foundations? If we want to send our usual packages to the usual foundations we reach out to, no one is in the office. Should we contact them to ask if we can send the package electronically?
Yeah, I would say right now, again, going back to the over communication, I would say just reach out to whomever you normally would send something to and ask how they'd like to receive information from you moving forward, and if electronic is the best way of doing that, or if they've set up some, another address to receive something. But I would say just reach out to people right now.
Awesome. And that was our final question. So I want to thank you all for giving us your time and just answering all the questions. We have some more coming in as I try to end it. One is from June Reed saying, thank you for the overview. You've been very inspiring. Thank you for coming to watch. And then another question now from Liz Haynes. And Liz says, when we are pivoting to meet the new reality, moving to online workshops, can we ask for sponsorships on something that is currently in process?
Is this from a communications point of view?
I think that's something that is worth approaching a mentor in a one-on-one and just following up with that there and kind of seeing their experience for that as well. Just because it's a time where everything is changing, it's hard to answer something so concretely.
Yeah.
I want to thank all the organizations and all of the business and arts staff for volunteering your time and answering the questions, and also to the mentors as well. Thank you so much for coming out and all that you do for the program. It's really nice that something like this is in place and that we can still have sessions like these given everything that's going on. And as per usual, this will be recorded and made available to all of you afterwards this session. If you have any suggestions on what you think would be helpful within context for webinars like this, feel free to email your PMs. We're asking what you want to hear from us right now because we want to best serve you and give you helpful information. So without further ado, I'm going to end the session. Thank you all and see you later.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.